What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Pixelists Podcast, the podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. As always, we're your hosts. That's Blake. I'm Will, and today we're here to talk a little Downfall, specifically the finale of this three-part Critical Role mini arc, if you will. But before we jump into that, you guys know the drill by now. We'll try to keep it swift, I suppose, but join our Discord. Should be a link down in the description box below. We got, a couple things happening tonight. As it is Thursday, we will be having our Critical Role watch party picking up right after Downfall. Should be very interesting. And then this Sunday, we will be, Blake and I actually haven't fully talked about this yet, but
Well, we can ask people what they think,
yeah.
I
So
guess.
we've been having our Calamity watch party, and so this Sunday would be episode 4. But those of you that are familiar, you know that episode 4 is a beast. I think over 6 hours. So we weren't sure if we should split that up into like 2 Sundays or try to do it all in one go. And if we do it all in one go, we might start earlier. But this is something we haven't really discussed yet. So if you have an opinion out there in the Celluverse, let us know. But in any case, something this Sunday, whether it's the whole
Yeah.
episode or just part of it.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
No, I mean the Discord's a great place. We have our stream tomorrow. We have a
That's
Friday
right.
wrap-up stream where we just kind of talk about what's in the news. We might talk about a little Doctor Doom in that stream.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Um, and we'll also during that stream we'll be doing our giveaway
Oh, yeah.
for our next one shot of Husk and Seed. If you like D&D, join the Discord and then navigate down to the of Husk and Seed channel and click the little emoji button to join the giveaway. I think we have around like maybe 27, 28 people who are signed up. And tomorrow it'll just automatically pick 6 people. Or excuse me, yeah, 6 people to join me in this one shot happening now later this month. So we're into August territory.
I know.
So
I woke up today and I was like, wait, it's August. I feel like July flew by.
I know, right? So anyway,
But yeah.
I think that's the only announcement I have.
All right.
So
Yeah, be sure to join that giveaway, y'all. Again, we will be choosing the winners tomorrow, so you have about 24 hours to sign up if you're interested in that. And we'll probably send out a tweet and remind you guys one more time as well. Only other thing, which we'll talk more about this in our next Worlds Beyond, but sorry I missed the previous one. There was some juicy things to talk about, so
sure, yeah.
I haven't heard the newest one yet, but
The newest
we'll
one is
ooh, okay.
very
All right.
good.
Well, I'm excited to jump back on and talk to you about that once we get caught up. But yeah, otherwise, I think that's it. So I guess without further ado, let's jump into our Downfall, which if you're familiar with us, then you already know what's going on. We're going to give a quick recap. I say quick, it's probably not going to be quick. This was 6.5 hours long, but
Right.
we'll give our recap of the episode. We cut that out, host it separately on YouTube for your viewing convenience. So if you just find yourself on that recap and want to hear our thoughts actually discussing the episode, that will also be linked down in the description. But my friend, if you would like to kick us off on this one.
Yeah, so the party has just escaped from the engine room of the Obtenibrator that they destroyed, and they've returned. I think they're either back in the speakeasy or they're within like the um, domain of Salaha where he had sent the construct. But the party's basically getting back together, and they've also gathered Casta as well. And it's basically like, hey, step 1 complete. Like we stopped the protocol of like disseminating the information across Exandria. Like we did it. Well, rather there being like deep celebration, Cassida is suddenly put off by the presence of faces she hasn't seen before. And being a brilliant archmage, she realizes that she is in the company of not just the prime deities, but also the betrayer gods as well. In realizing this, she looks to Trist, who she has formed a bond with, and essentially is like what's going on? What's happening? I think it's also to Shar, who comes up behind her and like grabs her by the back of the head and is kind of like, what's this Aeorian mage doing here? And does she need to be here anymore? Trist, realizing that Cassida's life is on the line, and Cassida herself also realizing her life is on the line, is going to try to cast a teleport spell, which Salaha effortlessly counterspells. And she begins to panic. She's realizing that the plan she had in mind as being one of the Society of the Primes, like, we're going to take this weapon, we're going to redesign it to kill the betrayers. She's putting two and two together and realizing, Trist, you and the Prime Deities aren't here to help. So then why are you here with the betrayer gods? And as she puts it together, she realized that they have come not just to destroy the machine, but to destroy Aor entirely. Cassida is thinking about her son, and she begins to plead and beg that they would spare the city, spare the family, spare her son. And she's also looking at Triss like, was I doing the right thing? Like, I didn't, when I said that stuff earlier about killing the betrayers, I didn't really fully understand everything. And then Laura Bailey has this great moment playing the matron, Amira, where she comes alongside her and puts her arm around her and says, like, of course you're doing the right thing. What's the password to get down the elevators, to get past the security down to the Factorum Malleus? Beyond this, Cassida gives sort of like her last ditch effort, and she says, hey, there is a scroll bank. You destroyed the scribe that had the protocol, but the scroll bank has backup copies. I can take you there. I can show you which scrolls has the information. You can destroy it, and then you can destroy the machine. And if you do that, no one has to die. The city doesn't have to be destroyed. And ultimately, they do agree to this plan, mostly because Aiden and Trist don't want to see the city completely destroyed. So ultimately, what they decide to do is they decide to split up. Some of the party's going to go to this scribe bank, and it's going to be Cassida, Trist, Acadia, and Father Milo, who says basically like, you think we're just going to let Cassida walk off with the Prime Deities after she's just revealed a plan to kill the Betrayer Gods? I don't think so. Like, we're going to come with you. And maybe Umleta goes as well. I can't remember. And the rest of the group's going to go down that elevator with the password that Cassida gives them and essentially attack and destroy the Factorum Malleus. On their way out, the Stormlord has already begun his assault, and Brennan describes a catastrophic and gruesome set of events of like the city lurching, people being like thrown up 80 feet immediately to their deaths, hundreds of people dying, a wizard who's like sort of trying to hold the storm back and then gets impaled by his own staff. It is total anarchy and disaster, and not very good things happening for Aor in this moment. But the party, they do split up. They do make it. Eventually, one does make it to the scribe bank, and they begin going through the scrolls. And then the other party descends down in this elevator of the Genesis Ward, eventually to the atrium of the Factorum Malleus. And then we go to break only, I think it's like an hour and a half into this 6.5 hour episode. So Will, what happens
Yeah.
after that?
Yeah. So, like Blake said, this was like 5 hours. So I'm gonna do my best to hit things, but I'll probably forget or not mention things, and y'all just let me know in the comments. But we pick up with the second half, with the crew that went toward the Factorum Malleus, basically standing in front of it, and Salaha kind of going up first, since he is an Aormaton and has not been discovered yet. So he walks up and sees Selena, who created him, and also a Castriel, this celestial. There's actually a number of people here, but that's who he engages with. And Salaha tries to deceive them because, he's still trying to keep up his disguise, but he fails. Even though he rolls a really high deception check and actually does deceive Selena, he cannot deceive a Castriel because one of the abilities of these celestial solars is to know when they're being lied to. So the jig is just immediately up, and we roll initiative. Now, the majority of the next 5 hours is combat. So, again, just going to
Oh,
give highlights here, but this was,
only 2 rounds of combat, by the way,
yeah,
in 5 hours.
is the definitely felt like the spiritual sequel to like the 1 second moment
Yeah.
from Calamity. But incredible encounter, centered around this Factorum Malleus and its 7 wards. So it's comprised of these 4 wards spinning below and 3 wards spinning above. And each one basically represents a different kind of domain, if you will, not in the same way we typically think of domains in D&D, but a different like source of power for the gods. And with each one destroyed, they will become closer to becoming gods again and have their abilities restored. So this was a really cool encounter with tons and tons of things going on. So I recommend you guys watch it to get the full effect. But these bonuses are crazy that are built into destroying these wards, and the 4 below are a bit weaker, with the 3 above being like extremely powerful boons. So to boil it down here, this encounter is basically team gods, both betrayers and primes, versus some named archmages of Aor, like Selena, who again is Salaha's creator, and Adamar, who was, I think, like the head of the Cogent
Yeah.
Society or something like that.
One of the chief architects of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we got a couple of named archmages. We have a Nafalshni. I don't know if I'm saying
Mm,
that right, but it's like a
yep.
grand demon. A Glabrezu, which is another big demon, a brass dragon, a silver dragon, and a Taro, the shadow dragon, a Castriel, the solar, Aormatons, and then several more unnamed kind of mages and wizards. So
Yeah.
those are the 2 teams here. Um, Now, of note, like I said, the gods get these boons when they destroy these wards, but of note, the emissary does not get these boons because he's not actually a god and is instead an emissary. And Brennan actually let Noshir decide, and Noshir just said, "Yeah, I don't think it would make sense for me to get those." So it was a pretty cool moment. But because of that, the emissary is way weaker than the rest of the gods as this battle goes on. So, in large part, they are doing their best to protect him because, as we know, there's something in the emissary that is like crucial for this mission. And namely, Aiden is the one who is trying to protect the emissary because he, for one, is taking half of the emissary's damage at all times. I forget which ability it is that does that, but he's doing that. And then also, he cast an ability which lets any of his allies be able to use a reaction to teleport to an ally and take all of the damage they would have taken. So that is happening all throughout this combat in order to, support each other as best they can. And one really clutch moment where this is used is a Castriel goes to attack Emira, but Aiden teleports and takes the damage for her. And then this is later paid off when Amira does the same thing back for him, and I think takes damage that would have killed Aiden in the moment.
Yeah.
And they have like a nice bond, and Aiden says like, "You're truly family now." But mid battle, we cut to Trist, who is with the other team with the scrolls, and the sending stone in her pocket goes off, and it's her son. And he's saying that like he's terrified, it's getting bad here, like the place is getting run over with the demons, and can you send any help? And then he hands the phone to his father, Amaris, Trist's husband, and he says, like, yeah, it's bad. Pervon is here trying to protect us, but it's not looking great. And Trist is like, you guys just need to go find somewhere safe and hide. And then while this conversation is happening, Amaris realizes that his daughter is missing, and they're like, "Where'd she go?" And the son says she went to go help others that were in trouble. And Trist can just kind of hear all of this chaos happening in the background when the stone just goes silent. Arcadia asks, "Hey, like, what are you gonna do?" And Triss is like, "I can't do anything under these current circumstances." So she elects to go run towards her brethren at the Factorum Malleus and decide to try and help them like destroy that as soon as possible. We then cut back to the main battle, and things are progressing. But the next big move that happens, and the biggest move of the whole thing, really, is Selena teleports Salaha like to her at the top of the Malleus, in between these 3 upper wards. And Salaha takes advantage of this by casting Meteor Swarm. And lots of counter spells go out, but none of them are ultimately successful. So the Meteor Swarm goes off, and he gets to choose, I think, like 4 different meteor impacts.
Yeah.
So what he does is he attacks these upper wards twice, and then he attacks a bunch of enemies with the other 2. So this is an absolutely insane attack. Each strike individually does 20d6 fire, 20d6 force. So This just destroys all three of the upper wards in one go, and it also kills Adamar and Acastriel. Selena manages to survive because she rolled her save on both of the strikes. But with these three upper wards down, this fight takes a drastic turn because they just got all three of the Omega powerful boons. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to list out exactly what they did, but just to give you a hint of what they did, they can now all cast a free spell on each of their turns, up to ninth level. So a free ninth level spell every turn. They get massive increases to their health and heal at the start of every turn, and they all essentially do 10x their damage. So around this time is when Trist actually makes it there and meets up with them. She heals everybody and actually has a great moment where she persuades one of the Aormatons to like join them and attack one of the wards, and she rolls a 60 on the persuasion due to all the bonuses they've gotten.
Yeah.
And the next big moment is Aiden casts Sunburst on the entire room. And after the damage that the meteor swarm did, this basically wipes out almost everything else. He kills all of the dragons in one go and the two big demons. And um, I think all but one of the wards is remaining at this point. So one of the wards they just destroy actually gives them true sight as an ability. And when that happens, they notice Father Milo disappear. So it was an illusion the whole time. And they're like, okay, that's why he hadn't been doing anything this fight. He wasn't really here. Selena at this point is like, I've made a huge mistake, and basically faces Salaha and repents. She says, I wish to know your light. Like, I'm so sorry. And she kind of throws her staff to the ground, and at the same time grabs this like jewel around her neck and hurls it up. And this jewel is the same one that everyone had seen earlier in a vision where Acastriel had given it to her. And what they realize is that there is a deity entrapped in this necklace. It is one of their brethren. So Salaha is given a choice here because Selena has thrown up this necklace, which is going to get destroyed, killing one of the gods. But at the same time, she's casting a spell, so he can either save his family, one of the gods, or prevent her spell cast. And Salaha goes to save the god. And because of this, Selena is able to cast Wish. And what this spell essentially does is it takes the information within Salaha from the scribe, which again is the Aormaton that he absorbed earlier, which is the one that like wrote down the blueprints for the Malleus. So she takes that information and then shoots it out to every wizard's mind in Aor, basically saying like, this is our last hope, like get out of the city, protect this information. um and so that happens, and basically in the same moment, um they are able to destroy this final ward, which makes the Factorum Malleus able to be destroyed essentially. So Salaha gives the jewel containing their god friend in to Asha, who breaks it open, and inside is Arcadia, who immediately asks, "Where is he?" And we realize that Asmodeus has been pretending to be Arcadia this whole time while casting the illusion of Milo, Father Milo. So some of the deities are like, okay, wait, what's going on with the betrayers? And they realize that the rest of the betrayers that were with them in here are no longer in here. They've run away. So some of them decide to chase after them and see where they're going, while the rest are remaining in this room. And when this last ward is destroyed, again, the gods are basically fully gods again. They have their full power, and their mortal forms are basically getting torn apart. So um we realize that or excuse me, the emissary is going to the middle of this Malleus and is like basically like dying to in order to destroy it and contain this like energy that's going to fully destroy the weapon. And it's basically bad news. And Salaha is given this option, I guess because he's like the god of arcane and stuff, to decide what happens with this energy. And he decides, you know what, I'm going to redirect this blast to the city itself, because Selena just poured all this information to everyone in the city, so now everyone in the city must die. um, So he does that, but he creates a gate at the same time so that any of his brethren, which I think Amira, the Raven Queen, is still like in the room with him, so that they are able to safely get out. And he actually pushes Selena through the gate as well, because he has this moment of actually being really proud of her and what she was able to accomplish. But so then we have this moment where big explosion, essentially, where the emissary is completely destroyed and then surrounded by darkness because he's now face to face with the matron who is here to, escort him to the other side. And he asks if, are you here to take me to mama? And she says, yes, and you did well. And she starts to escort him and he says, find those who are worthy and take them home. And hearing this, Amira thinks of the child, Cassida's son, Hollis, and actually has him transported out of the city to safety. And at this point, this blast ruptures through the city. The gods all shed their mortal forms and ascend back to godhood. Oh, I skipped a part actually. The deities that went to chase after the betrayers run into them, and we actually see that Cassida is just completely eviscerated, and standing over her is Amaris, who is Trist's husband. But actually, it's Asmodeus who says, I always take the form of those that would find me most beautiful. So he has killed Cassida, and he actually has the scrolls of information, basically the blueprints for the Malleus. So we roll initiative again. Trist luckily rolls highest, so she acts first, and she destroys the plans for the weapon, which Asmodeus was planning to use against them. So Aiden at this point asks Asmodeus, like, why? And he says, you had your chance for us to be family, but you're the ones that threw that away. I hate you all and I will hate you forever. And Aiden's like, do not lie in my presence, or something to that effect. But the betrayers just all up and leave after that. So then the blast rupturing through the city, all of the gods shed their mortal forms, and one last thing that Trist and Amira do is heal Cassida's body, not resurrect her, but like get her back in one piece. And Amira actually casts like a protective bubble around her that will protect her body from the crash of the city itself. So the gods, now all in their godly form, kind of meet up again up in the clouds, and the lawbearer joins them now. And Ayun is like, why didn't you come? And she says, it was love, because if something were to happen down there to the wild mother, I would have done anything to save her, and I can't break my own rules. So instead, I sent my son. Ayun then says, you know what, like, we've broken this place. And the rest of them all agree. And they say, to fix this, we got to do what we did before, except this time close the door behind us, basically planting the seeds for the divine gate. Saying we first got to reseal the betrayers and then we got to deal with ourselves. And it's at this point that the story is wrapping up. Matt actually rejoins the table as Brennan gives up, and he gives a short little monologue about the light from the occultist thalamus in the ruins of Aor basically fading and shutting down, having completed its vision. And that's where episode 3 of Downfall ends. Again, thank you for bearing with me on that long ramble of 5 hours, but yes, the conclusion of this 3 episode mini arc. And again, if you want to see our discussion, if you're on the recap, it'll be linked down below.
You did a great
Whew.
job, man. That was I think the only thing you didn't mention was the absolute like brutality of the first round that just like got them all to
Yeah.
death's door.
Yeah.
Um, I need to channel my inner Brennan Lee Mulligan and go pee real quick. So I need
All
like
right. Yeah,
60
you're good.
seconds. Sorry.
Um, yeah, guys, thank you. You should see my notes. They're very much Pepe Silva, Always Sunny in Philadelphia, as I was trying to just write down the highlights of this episode. And I think as I was giving the recap, I skipped over a paragraph. So I'm trying to make sure I didn't miss anything important in that on accident. So give me one sec while I'm reading through this. Um Oh, I did. Yep, I skipped something very important. So I'll just tell it now, and I'll catch Blake up. So there was this moment after Trist rejoins everyone else, and all the wards are destroyed. That she has all of her godly powers back. that she takes out the sending stone and sends it to her children as like a miracle now that she can do this again. And so the sending stone flies off towards Hawks Hill, where we see her family being protected by a werebear and a dryad and Pervon, the champion of the matron of ravens. And Trist's children are actually on the ground, like getting like being approached by a demon when suddenly the sending stone just smashes into it and completely obliterates it. And her children then like raise the stone and begin to glow and basically start getting some of their mother's power essentially. And they start like floating towards these hordes of demons and like taking them out and basically saying that like there is still hope. So yeah, like I was reading my notes because I felt like I skipped a paragraph on accident. And so I,
Yep.
I
Yep.
skipped the whole part with the sending stone going back to the kids.
Yeah. Which, as soon as we had the sending, I was like, not again. We can't do
Yeah.
this again.
How dare you?
um, but yeah, no, it was good. It was a very Brennan's a great storyteller. I love that um little note about her kids.
Yeah.
Um, and what a interesting, just as a random aside, Trist's request, or I guess the Everlight's request to the matron of, if their threads were to lead them to you earlier than they should, can you make sure you send them back? And she was like, no, which
Sorry.
I understood, um, but yeah, so
Yeah. Interesting that they're out there now. Like what
yeah,
implications does are they demigods? Is this like a cool
yeah,
inception of like ASMR um
yeah,
or is it, separate from that? And
yeah. That's a good way to
um
think of it.
yeah, but really interesting. But yeah, so
Um,
what did you think of the whole thing?
It was good. We chatted a little bit. I didn't get to watch it till yesterday, so I was a little bit behind the behind the eight ball. Is that an expression?
I don't know.
I was a little behind the ball,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, I loved it. I loved it. I love. It's hard to compare to Calamity, and what I said in the channel was Calamity for me is like the peak of storytelling. It was a truly like transformative experience. Like I'll always think back to where I was in my life when I watched that for the first time and watching it with my wife. This was not that, but we're also talking about like it's like playing WoW for the first time as a kid.
yeah,
You're just
yeah,
not gonna experience something quite like that more than a few times, right?
yeah,
So all that to say, yeah, I loved it though. I love Brennan Lee Mulligan. I have some small critiques for things I would have wished had happened a little bit different. Critiques isn't even really the fairest word. It's more of just like, oh, I wish we could have like explored this a little bit more, or gotten a little bit more of that. But I will say that the takeaway feeling from this is very different from Calamity. Calamity, I feel like, can be summed up in Brennan's story of Brennan's comments in the epilogue of, no one's going to know the exploits of the brass ring, but you effectively, the calamity won't be here forever because of what you guys did. It was hope amidst the tragedy of what had happened. And that was very different with Downfall, which was, all right, well, we killed everybody.
yeah,
Well, let's go back to war. It didn't have like the same it didn't have the same optimism, I guess, or hope with it, which is understandable. It's a tragic story, so
yeah,
it's not a critique. So much of it is just being like it had a very different feeling at the end of it compared to Calamity.
yeah.
So
I completely agree with everything you said. And I know you're saying it wasn't even a critique, but I would say that's largely by design. Like this was
right,
meant to be like a tragic, kind of horrific tale that, I
right,
think almost maybe would have been done a disservice if there was kind of like a happy ending to it in some way. Um, yeah, I totally agree. And it's really not I mean, you already said it, but it's really not fair to like make Calamity the standard by which we judge everything because it's like
right.
literally the best thing ever, Like
Yeah,
be like comparing every movie to like the Lord of the Rings trilogy or something. which I really enjoyed Downfall, but again, certainly it didn't reach the same highs as Calamity, but I'm not faulting it for that. It was a different
Well,
story, you know, and
and if you
but I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the cast, the new faces we got to see. They all, I thought, like really knocked it out of the park in all different ways, really, which was cool to see too. And just all the big swings they all took. And have you had a chance to watch Four Sided Dive yet?
someone mentioned that I should check it out, but yeah, not yet.
I've watched like most of it. I watched to the part where they start playing the game, which I think there's still more. Like I think they still answer questions, so like there's still probably more to uncover there. But I did listen to a majority of it. And like Nashir being the emissary was like nobody knew that was coming, which I thought was a really cool. Um, just a really cool move to do as a player. Brennan knew, obviously, but like
Brendan's like,
it's like
whoa,
whoa.
what?
um, but I thought that was so cool, especially because like it sets everybody else off. Like both the players and the characters were thrown off by that, which I thought was cool, especially Taliesin being the wild mother, being the spouse of that person that was supposed to be here. But yeah, really enjoyed it. I'm interested to hear what your critiques would be, unless that was already it that you covered, or what else you.
Um, there were a couple of things. This was like a much more pronounced outcome compared to Calamity. And again, not to necessarily like put these things like on the same
Yeah,
like opposed one another, but just I think it's the easiest like pointing out the differences is the easiest way to compare the two of them. But
yeah,
Calamity, all we knew was that the Calamity was going to happen. We didn't really know anything else. There were more boxes ticked for this in the sense of we knew Aor would be destroyed. We knew the Factorum Malleus would be destroyed. We know that the Calamity continues and that none of like the deities or the god or the betrayer gods get killed in the process. So it felt like some more like higher level story notes. Like we were already, and Brennan even kind of joked about like, are we going to have to retcon some of the lore based on like what
yeah,
happens here? And I think maybe that would have been a more bold and brave's not the right word because it implies they're being cowards by not doing it, but just to be like, hey, this story is going to happen, and whatever happens, we need to change some of the story. Like we might have to do that. I don't know. For me, it kind of created a little less like room to play a little bit in the sense of like, okay, we need to move to a point where the city does get destroyed. So it didn't feel like there was as much room to breathe, I guess, and explore like some of the relationships and just sort of like, uh, I don't know, the ambience of the city. Like I think about, the Hall of Prophecies in, uh, Calamity, which is just like a location in Avalier, and like how rich that site
yeah,
visit was for the
yeah.
overall story of like kind of exploring not even exploring Avalier, but
No, I get what you're
um
saying.
so maybe it was like it only being 3 episodes really is why maybe I'm feeling that way. But I would have liked to sit with these characters maybe for one more episode, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. I it felt like Avalier was a character in
Mm.
Calamity, and Aor
Hmm.
wasn't as much.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to like preface this every time I say something and people get annoyed, but like I think it was different from Calamity, and I think that was one of the reasons Calamity soared. But I think that almost just wasn't possible given the
Yeah.
structure of this.
Yeah. I
Because
think
they're gods, right? Like,
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like you think about, I love how you put that with Avalier because you also think about all the different elements of Paisha's grandfather, who we see just the statue, the archmage. I can't think of his name. The old dude that she
mm,
worked
yeah,
for,
yeah,
but then the guy with the mask. I can't think of his name either.
Loris, I think.
Loris of the Weaver's Mask. That's right. And then, you had Loquacius's like news function and like them going
Yeah,
into like the records. Like there was so much character within that city. And we didn't have the opportunity to get that with
right.
Aor. So I think that's a really great way to put it, I think.
Yeah, I think that, because all of the characters in Calamity were deeply ingrained in the city, we got to like explore that via them. But here in Downfall, they're all the only one from the city really would be Salaha, and he was the one we did kind of get a peek into with
Right.
the nightclub or whatever, which was, I feel like that kind of moment is the closest to those types of moment from Calamity, I would
Right.
say. And it's because all the other characters were, gods that led different lives before coming here. And because they are gods, and we do know that they will be making it through this, there wasn't really the same room to explore the depth of like who. And I mean, maybe there was, but that really wasn't the purpose of the story this time. So
Well, and also think about the final. I mean, you had to have the big epic battle, but it's level 20 combat, which we got to see the clunkiness of that unfold. Clunky is not the right word, but just like how time consuming
yeah,
that can be. Multiple legendary creatures with legendary actions, 5 hours of combat that was only 2 rounds,
yeah,
so like it's hard to imagine a story getting to breathe anymore without there being like while also keeping something like that.
yeah,
Which I'm not saying they should get rid of it, but it just like you said, you had to have the epic battle, but it's also I think a nature that was different. I think were they level 14, I think in Calamity, I'm pretty
I don't
sure.
remember.
Which is still high level, but just, um having that extra episode there, I think episode 3, the entire back half is combat. So that, creates a lot of space. But
Yeah,
anywho. And also episode 3 for Calamity is also like 6 hours, by the way. Because we streamed it this last
right.
Sunday, and I was like, I am going to be up late tonight.
Yeah,
'Cause I don't remember it being so long. So the total runtime is significantly longer than Downfall.
right. Yeah. Um. Yeah. So I think I don't know. Maybe it's not fair for me to say it was impossible to have both, but I think it was largely based on like the aim of what was being
Mm,
told here, why we got those differences.
yeah.
But again, this was meant to be kind of a horrific, tragic tale that was supposed to leave us with a bad taste in our mouth, as opposed to like the tragedy of Calamity, which left us with a little hope.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I
Um,
mean,
well, do you want
really
to get
enjoyed
in?
it. I don't want to sound like we're just saying this sucks compared to Calamity, because that's not even what I'm saying at all. But
Yeah, it was great. It was
yeah,
great. I loved it. It
yeah,
just, yeah, there were some things I would have wanted a little bit different, but I also would say that about pretty much any other episode of Critical Role,
yeah.
and Worlds Beyond. So anyway,
Um, and to slightly transition, in Four Sided Dive, they did reveal that prologue at Tingar, Bell's
yeah.
Hells does not see that, which I thought
Oh,
was real. I really thought they did see it, so that was a surprise to me to find that out. Which I
so
feel
because
like
that's
without that context, it
yeah,
makes the gods look way worse, right?
yeah.
Because
I
like
was
you
gonna say
don't
that's
know the connection between the
yeah,
primes and the betrayers. Um,
yeah. I was gonna say that's like the most compelling data point.
yeah,
Because now if they don't have that, then they probably also don't have the dialogue and like the epilogue of the gods like floating in the sky looking at like the
true.
destroyed city where they basically say like they kind of express regret over like this is what we've done to this place, like we need
Yeah,
to create the divine gate, etc. So you don't get that either. So I mean, what do they get? Basically, you know, they kill Cassida, the betrayer gods, but and then they destroy the city and kill literally everyone in it. So I'm very curious, like, what are your thoughts? I guess the biggest question is, how do you think Bell's Hells is going to respond?
I don't know, man, because without the context that we were just talking about, I mean, it is messed up. They destroy an entire city, but like, I feel like it's not like so messed up that you're like, what? It's like, okay,
Yeah.
like you can still. you can still get where they're coming from because they were threatened, right? Like these
Right.
mages were holding a gun to their head. So it's like, what do you want me to do, bro? Like, sorry. So like I don't feel like it's compelling enough to kind of make sense for Ludinus's confidence in like being like, oh, you'll see now, like after I show you this. Like, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's messed up what they did, but like they didn't just do it for no reason.
Right.
So I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't know if it moves the needle either way for them really. Like I think they're like, yeah, that is messed up, but Bell's Hells already wasn't very like gung ho gods. They're more just against lewdness and like the unknown of unleashing a god
Yeah.
killer.
That's
So
kind
I
of like
like, I don't know if it moved the needle, but what about you?
I can see them being like, Ludinus, I get it, but you're a douchebag, man. Like, like it's your biggest issue. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any situation where like I mean it would be very interesting if this happened, but I don't think like Bell's Hells is gonna be like, whew, all right, Ludinus, we're joining you, man. And like I don't see
Yeah.
something that drastic happens. And I would expect Ludinus also doesn't fully expect that either. But I also would wonder what would Ludinus if it's not that, what would Ludinus be hoping for in in showing this to them? Like,
Yeah.
is there a middle option there? And if not, like, it's not really clear, like, what would be the motive aside from like Matt and Brennan getting together and being like, let's do a callback, series.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I don't
so
know cuz also what beyond just showing Bell's Hells, which was kind of just a bonus in the moment given the circumstances, like, hey, while we're here, like, come look at this. He was there for something else, right? Like, and
yeah,
I even speculated in the previous episode that maybe it was their real names from the Tingar segment, but now that we know that they didn't even see that, that's not it. So I wonder if it is like almost propaganda and like maybe yeah, it's not going to move the needle for Bell's Hells given we know where they're at, but maybe it could move the needle like to the planet as a whole. Like if he, cuts together some propaganda of these scenes just showing like all the most horrific moments, like could he turn a bunch of believers into non-believers now or something? Like I don't know. Like
yeah,
maybe
I
just
do.
get more people on his side.
Yeah, I do wonder, like, what what was he looking for in AR? Like, what's he been trying to get?
Yeah.
It seems like it's something more punchy than just like, more supplies. Um,
Oh,
so yeah, go ahead.
not to cut you off, but what's also interesting and something that I'll say I don't want to rope you in on this necessarily, but I have been wrong about is that the Factorum Malleus was a key to unlocking Predathos, which it wasn't. It was its own separate way of eliminating the gods. So could that be what Ludinus was after? And now he has two ways to potentially get the job done. Because we know that the plans were sent to every wizard's mind, and presumably they all died. But like maybe because of this Thaumas, the way it can like read into people's memories, maybe he has those plans now too. That would make sense at least.
Well, what's also interesting is um, unexplained the blue spheres
Yeah, yeah.
with people inside them.
Yeah, that moment at the end with the Mira doing it to Cassida, I was like, "Oh, here we go." But then no, that was just protecting her.
Yeah.
So my
So
best guess, since it wasn't ever explained there, is I think the last time Matt was it Chetney that maybe did a grim psychometry on it or something, just saw like the really like prestigious archmage like trying to calm people down and then cast this like a spell. So I'm guessing it was just like the people that were there cast some sort of spell as like a last ditch effort, and it wasn't like one of the gods or something weird like that. But some of those people have the plans.
that's what I was gonna say is
Yeah.
yeah, like yeah, they have. It seems like Ludinus, well, he wouldn't know they have the plans, but it seems like it'd be a real boon to try to figure out
Well, he
how
would know
to.
now.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Actually, I guess.
I
Yeah,
think there
that's a good
was
point.
one comment
That's a good point.
somewhere where he had tried to free those people and just never was able to find a way.
Oh, okay.
I'm not,
I wonder
I might be making that up.
yeah, I wonder if that was like a wish spell also.
I bet
Because it
so, man. Those were
seems,
just flying out.
yeah, which, yeah, this is, the pinnacle of a D&D spell, and it just being casually used so often. It's kind
Yeah.
of crazy. Um, but yeah, so you have those people, which are alive, I guess, in stasis. The Somnovan, like
Mm,
Bamping out, we didn't get any like screen time to that
yeah.
either.
That's a big
Um,
campaign to tie in.
yeah, yeah, I've put that together. Yeah. Um, and then I thought it was interesting. I almost wondered, like, I'm sure it won't, but like Cassida's body being not preserved, but like protected from being like, disintegrated on impact.
Yeah.
I was also curious if that would be like a breadcrumb in some way,
Yeah.
or
Because why?
I think
You
just
know,
respect to Cassida,
I
right?
guess. But it almost felt like, yeah, I was curious about that too. And then her son, you know,
Yes.
we talked about it in whatever episode one, maybe, but like, could that be lewdness?
Yeah, and we were talking about in the Discord, or I asked directly. I said, "Hey, is the implication that Palace is lewdness?" And there was some mixed responses about it. It seems like there'd be a pretty compelling explanation for lewdness.
Yeah.
Literally, his mom was killed. He literally everyone was killed but him, and it'd be a bit ironic that he's only alive because a god saved him. So we'd have a compelling reason to, you know, get
Yeah.
revenge. But Hallis would presumably have the knowledge, though, since everyone in the city got the knowledge.
Yeah. Maybe I'm not, because like, I would need to go back and watch, but I didn't know if it was like only like wizards and like, did everyone get it or was it only like,
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
but I mean, in any case, though, I would say that there's at least some people that have it in the bubbles.
Yes,
And the thalamus might just give lewdness access to it anyway, you know?
yes. Okay, yeah. And then also Selena, she was
Yeah.
sent out through
Yeah,
the
where'd
gate,
she go?
which I couldn't tell if he was like sending her out up top to die, or if she was sent elsewhere as like a form of mercy.
Yeah, I was kind of confused about that too, because he cast the gate spell and he pushed her through it. Now,
Yeah.
like, I presume that just went to like another chamber in Aor further away from like the explosion. So like she still might have been screwed. She just didn't die in that moment, but it seems like a pretty big loose end to leave. So like I don't
Well, didn't
know.
he protect her from dying to the energy?
Yeah, I think so. He was like cuz he was like proud of her.
Yeah. So it doesn't seem like he would have sent her out to die in the city. It doesn't make sense that he would protect her from being killed right then and then being like, well, you're still gonna die. So see you later.
Yeah.
It doesn't really add up. But also it does seem like this is one of the three chief architects of the Factorum Malleus. It also doesn't seem like you can be like, oh yeah, probably nothing bad will happen with that.
Yeah.
See you later. So
So yeah,
there's
I didn't really
also
know what to make of that, but
there's also just a lot happening after 6 hours. So it could also just be, oops, I didn't address it,
yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but, but yeah, Brennan also does a great job of like describing chaos, like as the city was like lurching and like people were
Yeah.
dying. It brought me back to Worlds Beyond when, with Naram, without saying much
Mm,
more, but
yeah,
just like
yeah.
describing Port Talon.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, okay.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
bad when gods are angry. Um,
um, let's talk about the Arcadia reveal,
mm, yeah.
which we had theorized maybe, and we talked about this in the first episode of like maybe Arcadia being Asmodeus as like a nice twist. And
Yeah.
then it was like, but then who is Father Milo? We didn't account for this potential of Father Milo just being like a projection,
Yeah.
essentially. But help me track the details here. Um, it was always Asmodeus, right? It wasn't Arcadia. Then at some point there was like a capture, and then Father, you know.
Right. That's my
So
understanding that
okay,
it was from the moment we saw Arcadia on screen, it was always Asmodeus because we see that vision. I forget who shows it to us. Maybe it was Arcadia, but there's the vision of a Castriel meeting with like the magistrate of the city, and he hands them the necklace. And I remember Brennan showing us that like their faces are shocked, but we don't get to see what they see. But what
Yeah.
they were seeing was Ioun trapped in there, like he
Yeah.
had a god trapped. And that meeting happened before the events as we know them in Downfall, which means Arcadia was trapped before episode 1. So
Yeah.
it would have had to always been him.
So, do we think a Castriel came and like captured Arcadia and then handed her over?
I think Asmodeus was pulling the strings. Now, whether Castriel knew that
Yeah.
or was a pawn, I don't know. But I think, yeah, I think definitely Asmo orchestrated all that.
I would agree with you. It either way, it was either that or like a very convenient, oops, I can be Arcadia.
Yeah,
It definitely felt like whether Castriel knew it or not, that Asmodeus was very much benefiting from this without, obviously the party knowing about it.
yeah. Because
Um,
it also is what expedited the whole timeline. Remember, it's like we don't have a week to investigate this. We have tonight. So, which was definitely all by design by him as well.
mhm.
So yeah, I thought that was a cool little twist. And yeah, even I know people like from the moment we were introduced to Arcadia, I'm pretty sure people in the Discord were like, something's fishy about that.
Yeah.
Um, so nice call, a lot of you out there.
Brennan plays such a great Asmodeus. I loved his like small monologue of, I'll hate you for eternity, till the stars blink out of the sky or whatever he said.
Yeah,
Um,
and I
just such
loved
a great,
I loved the Dawnfather's response to that too.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that
Uh,
just go ahead.
Well, Nick's acting was fantastic too, of just like the somber, like, why must it always come to this? Like, it was
Yeah,
just such a just great
that whole
moment.
scene was so good.
Yeah.
And I love that that was like I think at that point he had kind of shed that
Yeah.
like he had aged like into like the true Dawnfather type of moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, just so much nuance there. With both of them going back and Asmodeus having a great point of like you're the one that like gave up on this family first, actually.
Yeah.
And then we've had this long back and forth many times about Asmodeus and is he really lying, or is he just twisting the truth? I love kind of the implication that like the one big lie we've actually seen him tell on screen is that he hates them and will forever. Like that
Mm.
that is a lie because he's just,
Yeah.
being,
Yeah.
upset. But yeah, and then the whole I think like you because I think I maybe saw your comments in the Discord. When we first get that reveal of Amaris, I was like, "Whoa, has he been
Yeah.
Trist's husband this whole time?" And that was like the
Yeah.
long con. But
Yeah.
I don't think that's the implication. I think
Right.
just
Yeah.
in that moment, that's what he looked like.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but that would have been
Crazy.
devious,
Yeah.
like, whew.
Yeah. There was one other detail I wanted to mention, not to go backwards to an earlier point of like what would be compelling to Bell's Hells. And something I forgot to say was maybe the most compelling point is not just the tragedy of Cassida, but that she provided this whole thing was a war between the gods, between the prime deities and the betrayer gods. And what could have been a real boon to them, an opportunity to destroy the betrayer gods, ultimately it was like, ooh, well, we can't
Yeah,
really do that. And just like I pair that with the Wild Mother's comments at the end where she said like, or maybe it was Ioun actually, who said, we've broken this place. Like we've just done so much harm. And then also pair that with Garathrin, the construct, the angel basically. I can't think of his name.
yeah,
His planetar, the planetar, who basically just talks about like we have just gone to war and like thousands have died, hundreds of thousands have died, And it's just like a squabble between the two of you. I think all of those data points might be the most compelling thing. Again, I don't think the outcome is like, we're Team Ludinus now,
Yeah.
but I think it is very telling that the gods, after so many have died, when given the opportunity to end the war, instead opt not to
Yeah.
and to destroy AR.
Yeah.
AOR.
I mean, because it's definitely messed up, even without the, like, even if we remove Aor and the gods didn't destroy it, which again you could at least rationalize somewhat because Aor had a gun to their heads. But let's just remove that off the table. It's still very messed up that there's been 100-year wars where so many casualties have happened between two sides that when push come to shove aren't going to do anything to each other. Well, the
Yeah.
betrayers would do stuff to the primes, but the primes wouldn't to the betrayers. So yeah, Garathrin, was that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the most interesting points of the whole thing, that like you made us to be good, and I forgot what the line was, but yeah, just that, like, why are we even fighting, like,
Yeah.
what, this is all pointless bloodshed. um so yeah, I totally agree that that's, now, Bell's Hells personally probably doesn't move the needle for them that much, but I would agree in general that's like one of the biggest things, I would say.
I do think it highlights like one of the weirdest things about Bell's Hells is that no one really is pro God except for F.C.G, who's no longer with them, except for I
Yeah.
guess Orem, kind of somewhat ish
Yeah.
with the Wild Mother.
Boreas,
Um,
but that's so new, I don't know if we can really.
yeah, yeah. Um, so I'm very curious, yeah, how they respond
It
tonight.
is interesting. I wonder if Tevin will have an interesting reaction to any of this. Like, being one of the commanders of these armies, like, will he have a similar reaction as Garathrian, or is he,
Mm,
or will that just brush off him like nothing?
right. Yeah.
I will say something from the Four-Sided Dive about the whole Society of Primes, which was Cassida's plan to turn it against the Betrayers. Brennan did reveal that that wasn't going to work. Like, if the party had decided, well, yeah, let's try to do that, like, it wasn't going to work because they knew, like, the archmages of Aor knew about the Society of Primes and knew what they were trying to do. But it was a moment of, like, these are some of the most brilliant people in the planet helping us to create this weapon, so, like, let's let them finish and then we're going to kill all of them. So, like, that plan never would have worked. Which,
Yeah.
not that it changes anything from a moral standpoint, but just cool to know that that
Yeah.
really wasn't going to be able to go anywhere.
And I read somewhere, I don't know if it was a summary somewhere, I was on Reddit or what, but also some of the party members wanting to be betrayer gods. And
Oh
then
yeah,
Brennan
yeah.
was like hashing it out and was like, this ultimately is probably not going to work
Yeah,
either.
that was, I think that was like the one of the first things they talked about in the Four-Sided Dive, and I think Brennan, like, made a, and I'm gonna butcher it, so y'all should just check it out. But it was essentially like, there's this really interesting dynamic as a prime deity, because you're conflicted about, like, killing these people, but also, you're being threatened. Whereas a betrayer, you don't really have that conflict. So he said, like, it's not that you guys couldn't do it and it still wouldn't be really fun, but there's just, like, less there compared to playing a prime deity.
Yeah.
So I
My
think
other
that's why they
question,
ultimately didn't.
my other question. So Garathrin talked about how they were told to sheath their swords, like to stop fighting the war. But it sounds like the betrayers' armies like were
Yeah.
continuing to like ravage the world.
Yeah. What's up with that?
Um, Yeah, well, I mean, are we over reading into that? Or the implication that like the prime deity said like, "Hey, stop the war," but we're gonna let like people continue to be like murdered in the name of like this truce between us, um, which would be an even again another strike against them. But I don't know if I'm reading into that or not.
Yeah, I feel like
So,
it could go either way, because certainly, like, Hawks Hill was getting overrun. So I would say one feasible explanation is just, like, the state of the world after 100 years in the calamity. Like, all of these monsters and stuff are probably just having free roam of the place. So, like, maybe it's just like demons and devils that aren't, like, affiliated with a
yeah,
betrayer necessarily, just kind of having their way with the world. But that might be very charitable for me to suggest that, compared to, you know,
mm,
it being the armies.
yeah, okay.
So I don't know.
All right.
Um,
Anything else?
um, do you think that dragon was Bolo at the end? Do you know what I'm talking about?
The one where it said my name was,
Yeah,
and then
because there
I
was the
don't,
theory in
I
Calamity
don't
that
think
Bolo
so.
survived because she was a
Yeah,
dragon.
yeah. I
Bro, I
mean,
whether or not like Brennan meant for that to be hard canon, I think that's absolutely what he was implying with that line, but
you
he
think
left
so?
it ambiguous. But that
Yeah,
has to be what he was going for.
I guess so. I actually didn't know where he was going with that. That does make sense though, as a nice little subtle nod. So,
So I don't at the part I had gotten to that hadn't come up in Four Sided Dive, so I don't know if it does or not, but
yeah,
I thought that was hilarious. In my
yeah,
head canon until proven otherwise, at least.
yeah.
And then just on that note, I think it was two mages we saw transform into dragons. Um, I'm wondering, are those dragons that were in humanoid form, or are those wizards that cast like true polymorph on themselves?
Oh, yeah.
I
Kind of like Caleb,
Yeah,
uh, whatever it's called. Yeah. I mean, either way, you got combat with multiple dragons.
yeah,
It's getting pretty serious. So, as we saw after one round of combat.
yeah.
So,
And bro, those we didn't really get into it, but those that was just such a cool encounter design that kind of got that well, not ruined. I don't want to say that, but kind of got just like I don't know the word here. Quickly became obsolete due to the way they unlocked all three of those things in one go.
yeah,
Um, but that was such a fun just design and to get all those crazy power ups and I don't know if Matt and Brennan like worked hand in hand on that necessarily, but
yeah.
if that's any indication on what fighting a god would look like how on earth are you supposed to destroy one?
Here, one second. Someone keeps knocking on the door.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, like and not that I ever expect, Bell's Hells to have to fight a team of gods, but well, campaign 1 spoilers, they do fight a god, but they have the trammels to, weaken it. They don't kill a god. They effectively banish one. But like if there was actually an encounter where they fought a deity like with those abilities and with those stats, like be like impossible, I feel like.
What were you saying?
I was just talking about like if those abilities were like truly the 5e stat sheet for fighting a god, like how would they ever beat one? They basically
Yeah,
full heal at the start of every turn, nat 20s on every death save,
yeah,
times 10 damage, times double saves and rolls. Like
yeah,
I kind of want to see
yeah.
like a battle like a one shot or something. But yeah, just a really fun encounter. The whole thing was just really just like a DM's fantasy of like, okay, I'm gonna have three
Yeah.
dragons and six gods, and I bet it was just a lot of
Yeah.
fun to kind of plan and put together.
And again, it's that kind of combat's very as a DM, it's very overwhelming.
I
Keeping
couldn't
track of
do it.
everyone's abilities, legendary actions, knowing all the abilities, your player's ability, there and conditions too.
Yeah,
Stunned, frightened, etc. A lot of stuff to keep track of. Who's used the reaction, who hasn't.
yeah,
Um, so hats off to Brennan for managing all that.
yeah. I don't envy that at all. Um, yeah,
All right. Well, I think that's it, right?
I think so. I'm interested to see how Bell's Hells react to this, which again we'll find out tonight. So join us in the Discord for that. But overall, I want to circle back around to saying how much I did enjoy this. Thought it was fantastic.
Yep.
Bring Brennan back. Bring Noshir. Bring Nick. Bring Abu back. They were all incredible. Um, I love that they did this just in general. Like they took this kind of swing with this mid campaign 3 mini arc. I think it's cool all the chances they're taking, and yeah,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
I love it. All right. Well, we'll have our stream tomorrow and our giveaway announcement, and then watch party tonight for Critical Roles episode 102, and then Calamity episode 4, whatever that looks like on Sunday.
Yeah. Oh, and not this isn't like a real announcement, but I think this was our 200th episode of the podcast. Which really
Wow,
we've probably done more like 220, but like not everything we've done has been like an episode. But
that's
like
cool.
of official like Critical Role plus Worlds Beyond, like those types of things, I think this is 200. So
That's really cool.
that was cool. We almost
I love that.
landed 200 on episode 100, but we just missed it.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
Well, I
anyways,
think
y'all.
that'll do it.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you soon. Bye.